Assassin's Creed Shadows has been delayed till March 20th after a February 14th date was initially penciled in. However, it brings about a wider conversation on just how much Ubisoft are hinging their entire business on the release of this game. Even more recently than the game being delayed, or kind of alongside it, was Ubisoft announcing that they've recruited various strategic advisors to remold the entire business, aiming to cut costs by around 200 million euros in total. CEO Yves Guillemot said, "We have taken decisive steps to reshape the group in order to deliver best-in-class player experiences, enhance operational efficiency, and maximize value creation. We are actively exploring various strategic and capitalistic options to unlock the full value potential of our assets. We are convinced that there are several potential paths to generate value from Ubisoft's assets and franchises." Now, that's a whole load of, what is that? That's a whole load of hot air. He's made form from air, but it's still hot air. I want to throw a few more things in here because the news against Ubisoft is stacking up if you were kind of waiting for them to sort themselves out. Like I said, all of this comes after news that 2024's soft-selling and in need of overhauling post-launch Star Wars Outlaws actually sold less than 2023's Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is insane.
Well, Jedi Survivor is like one of the best Star Wars games, Scott.
It's a phenomenal game, but clearly Ubisoft needed a lot more sales from Outlaws. It was meant to be their big tentpole release of last year, or one of them anyway. So to that end, according to XGamesIndustry.biz's Christopher Dring, across Europe, the game Star Wars Outlaws was the 47th best-selling game of the year and sold less than Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which was released the year before. I wanted to throw in that upcoming Ubisoft games include Beyond Good and Evil 2, a bunch more Assassin's Creed projects, including the Animus Live Service Hub thing that I'll be amazed if that goes forward. There's the Splinter Cell remake that at least has been officially confirmed. I think I mentioned Beyond Good and Evil 2, and there are currently rumors doing the rounds about Far Cry 7. But overall, they need Assassin's Creed Shadows to be the biggest thing ever. They've delayed it twice now, 3 times even. They've got all these strategic advisors on board. Like, what do you think of the state of the whole thing?
So much to jump into there, like 3 big pillars of conversation, I'd say. Going back to that initial statement about getting people in to maximize value across their IPs.
Capitalistic options.
That is a press release that isn't for us. That's not for me, you, and everyone at home. That's not to instill confidence in us that they are going to make great games or are treating them with respect or whatever it is. That's, we're getting a bunch of businessmen in to make sure our shareholders and our stakeholders are happy and that we're providing value for you, good sir. We're going to make that decimal point go up by a couple of points. And I just think that's not, we've seen that's not how you sell games, like to try and rinse as much money out as possible, to try and cut costs to save $200 million. Are there probably wasted resources within Ubisoft on certain projects? Absolutely. Should they have spent that much money on Skull and Bones? Probably not. Will they ever release Beyond Good and Evil 2? Probably
not at this stage.
It's not to say that they were of sound business mind beforehand and no one can help them or anything like that. It just is one of those, like they even admit, like extremely capitalistic press releases that doesn't fill me with joy, because you mentioned it a good few times last year, the Blizzard book by Jason Schreier, all about like the rise, fall, and rise again of Blizzard and how they turned from their initial incarnation to kind of being overtaken by a lot of these executives and money men and people who aren't interested in games. They just are interested in selling consumer products. Like that's how the entire industry has gone. But to me, this reminds me of another rung within that ladder. Like, I don't trust that this will result in great games. And like you mentioned there, you know, what have they got on the horizon? I'm really looking forward, personally, to Assassin's Creed Shadows. And for me, let them cook with that, as long as they need to deliver a good Assassin's Creed game that isn't full of the kind of glitches and the half-baked ideas that we sometimes associate with Ubisoft games. But assuming that does well, they need more than that. And like you described there, Far Cry 7 is, you know, I used to love me some Far Cry. Is that going to do Assassin's Creed Shadows numbers? It might do well, but what else do they have in the pipeline to support this one game? Not much, in my opinion.
Because I forgot about the Prince of Persia remake as well, Sands of Time remake. Obviously, last year's The Lost Crown didn't do very well at all, bombed considerably. Like the rest of the team was like, you know, redistributed amongst Ubisoft. Like it seemed like the Prince of Persia name didn't carry it. So that whole thing of what is Ubisoft in the modern day? Like it's not like they cultivated that many more Rabbids games or Rayman or whatever. Like, you've kind of got a handful of different franchises here that I don't know what level of bankability they want. Obviously, it's as high as possible, and it does seem like they're in dire straits right now. And there are so many reports doing the rounds, including one that I did last year, talking to various members of Ubisoft anonymously, just as to how messy the whole thing is from the inside and how no one on the top level, the Yves Guillemot level, can decide what they want to focus on. It is always, okay, this is the next big thing, live services, let's do this. Oh, actually, no, it's this. Let's do weighty single player stuff. Oh, actually, no, it's multiplayer stuff. And there are so many projects being greenlit and then cancelled months later, years later. And some of that is just alongside the reality of the industry of how long it takes to get a workable prototype where you can then try to convince people that it's worth pursuing past the initial green light. But it is worth saying that when things like Prince of Persia that went from, and I'm going back a long way now, I'm an old man, but you still have, the Sands of Time, Warrior Within, Two Thrones trilogy was a big old deal. And Prince of Persia used to be a big old deal. And Sands of Time, I think, did have eyeballs on it until the gameplay demo was so bad. But the fact that it's gotten this dire, and if we talk about optics, we talk about shareholders and the way that they're viewed, they seem like they're clutching for straws right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it really seems like the whole company is hinging on Assassin's Creed Shadows. Because, like I said, depending on what level of bankability they want, obviously everybody in a certain sphere wants their own Fortnite or whatever the hell. Things like a Splinter Cell remake, a Beyond Good and Evil 2, fan-focused projects that sound good, they're not going to be on the level that they want, assumedly. Alongside all of this is a conversation around Ubisoft potentially going private. They're also in talks with Tencent to be bought out, but apparently the Guillemot family wanted to retain full control, which apparently was a sticking point for the Tencent side. So that's still ongoing, like the future of Ubisoft being owned entirely by different people. Like if you go back far enough, obviously there's still individuals that are there to this day. Ubisoft is a family-owned business.
Yes.
Like there's a whole thing with how far they've come, and maybe they're ready to hang up their what do you hang up? A shield?
A hat?
Hanging up all the hats and moving on. So there's that side of it too, but it's like, can they weather this particular storm? Like, do you think Assassin's Creed Shadows is it? Is that going to be like a Witcher 3 level, massive, you must play it thing?
I think so. Assassin's Creed, don't even consider the quality of the recent games, but just look at the sales of the recent games. They have gone strength to strength. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, if I recall, was the first AC game to hit $1 billion. Yeah. So if they can make around that ballpark with Shadows, I do think it is a title still and a franchise still that is up there with the biggest in the industry. I think I said it a few months ago, but I do think Assassin's Creed is also one of those games that reaches the casual market and might be the one of two games that someone buys this year. It might be true. Assassin's Creed, it might be Call of Duty, it might be Assassin's Creed, and it might be FIFA, something like that, right? So I do think it has that wider cultural impact. It's just whether, one, it's good enough not just to make money, but to reinstill confidence in Ubisoft. I think that's a big thing. And two, how does it factor into their future plans for the wider Assassin's Creed franchise? Because like you said, they've got so many other games in production. This was initially supposed to be like the big live service kickoff for the entire Assassin's Creed Infinity sort of brand that everything will plug into. So in that regard, it's not just an Assassin's Creed game. Like you said, it's become this nexus point for the entire country, for the entire franchise going forward, maybe even for the business model of the other franchises going forward, like Far Cry and stuff. But going back to what you said just quickly about like Prince of Persia back in the day, I think we've just completely lost that element of Ubisoft that they admittedly used to have, where they would just be willing to try new things, whether that was brand new IP or reinvent an old IP, making Far Cry 3 the third title in that very wonky trilogy of games, not to mention the spin-offs, like reinventing the entire open world genre with one game. Like they were taking risks.
Ubisoft formula is a big deal for a reason. We all got sick of it because it got everywhere so fast.
Exactly, man. So I feel like I've not seen them take a risk like that in the AAA space. We champion stuff like Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, or Star Wars Outlaws from last year has taken baby steps in the right direction, which they absolutely do. But I feel like Ubisoft needs to do more than baby steps at this point. And I want Assassin's Creed Shadows to feel like a real, might not be, but a real break from what Valhalla offered us and make it feel like a new era of Assassin's Creed. And if they nail that, maybe they're on the right track. But like you said, they've got such a tough and tumultuous time ahead of them, even if the game is successful, I think.
I feel like there's been a level of cynicism that's been really like overt from Ubisoft to the consumer, where it's like, you'll buy it anyway. X-Defiant was like such a brazen like Call of Duty chasing, like a free-to-play game that's very Call of Duty, but we're going to use our own franchises. We're going to mesh together Third Echelon and from Splinter Cell and the cleaners from The Division and the dudes from Rainbow Six and whatever, which I probably called the Rainbow Six department. But we're gonna do all that stuff, and then it just didn't have any soul to it. Like in a way, at the time, I thought it was like a fun branding exercise.
Yeah.
That like a bunch of shareholders would be like, that's gonna make so much money because look at all these fandoms, they're all gonna come together. But I think there's something nakedly cynical about that approach, and it wasn't there in the era that gave us everything from Rayman to Splinter Cell, like I said, to Far Cry 3, or even those older Far Cries. And so I don't know how you get back to that, and I don't think they know what they are anymore. And so I don't want them to just be a legacy company. Like, going forward, there are so many Assassin's Creed projects in the works, whether it's the Animus stuff or Jade or Hex. And it's at that point like doing a witchcraft Assassin's Creed. What even is that? Like, other than just you're slapping the name on so that it sells more. If Ubisoft were doing a witch-based game, and it was just Ubisoft, like a horror game or something, that'd be more interesting than trying to convince me that it actually fits in the Assassin's Creed universe.
Look, I agree, right? But it probably wouldn't sell 20 million copies. Well,
exactly.
So maybe not.
But that method makes people get so sick of that approach.
This is it. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They have these massive expectations, not unlike someone like Square Enix. So then when you kind of suggest removing it from a franchise, trying to do something new, it's suddenly too much of a risk. And I hate that we've gotten to that point that we talk about so many times about things needing to hit that ceiling or they're just completely useless. It's not like we can even have a disappointment anymore. Everything is a bomb if it doesn't make what was expected of it. And 9 times out of 10, the developers won't even get another chance. They'll either be shepherded onto a new project that has the revenue model of what the company. Yeah, let's go with that.
They are a company.
What the company wants, or they might just be shut down entirely. Like, there are no second chances to convince people, I don't think. In a vision, it's like, all right, you failed, that failed. The entire idea is dead, not just the game.
That's the thing, and like I love Prince of Persia Lost Crown. I think anyone who plays that game realizes it's an incredibly well-playing game, and it's awesome, but the team's already shut down and moved around. So it's like, even the idea of sales or putting it on PS Plus or Game Pass and getting it in front of people, like those other avenues going forward, like something internally doesn't believe in that thing. So you move on from it. Whereas Star Wars Outlaws has the Star Wars name. We're not going to give up on it. There were all the overhaul patches, changing the shooting, the stealth. Like, it just is so nakedly cynical and shareholder chasey and whatever. And those things have always been there, but more in the background.
I think, sorry, I keep cutting you off. I was just going to say, it's important to note as well, like the major shareholders that a lot of these companies and game companies are, responding to are dumb. I don't know if you've ever read a shareholder Q&A with the companies that they're associated with. They think they know what they want, but they have some of the dumbest ideas ever. I mean, late last year, there was that report doing the rounds that the shareholders at Ubisoft were saying, this wouldn't have happened if we had a new Watch Dogs. Where's the new Watch Dogs?
Just release it now.
Which is one, all right, I want to see Watch Dogs come back, but even your knowledge doesn't make sense. You saw the previous 2 Watch Dogs games, right? Like 2 and 3, Legion even, and they didn't make the money that you think this thing is worth. Like, what?
One of those shareholders, there was some game they got delayed, it might have been Assassin's Creed, where they said, we'll just release it now anyway.
It was Capcom and Monster Hunter.
Right.
What's the new one?
Wilds. Sorry, no. Oh my God.
It's
Wilds,
the new one.
Might be Wilds.
I want to go with Wilds.
Let's go with Wilds.
The last one was World. This is.
I think it is Wilds.
Yeah, let's go with it.
My brain said that.
Yeah, it was the same thing. A shareholder Q&A with Capcom, and they were like, our forecasts are looking a little bit smaller for the end of this year. Can you not just release Monster Hunter now
just
instead?
Put it out.
And they were like, do you know how anything works? I'm paraphrasing that. Capcom didn't say that. I said that in my head.
Yes.
But they essentially just said no, like it'll be done when it's ready. So that disconnect between the people who demand the value, quote unquote, from these games and these franchises, like their thought process, again, it's not about making good games, it's about maximizing that value within, not even that though, within specific windows. And if you don't hit it within those specific windows, you might as well just be wasting your time in many respects.
Every day, the industry gets more dumb.